You have to speak your mind, but remember, go by the principles about leading with humility, right? So we don't want to get angry. We don't want to tell people that they're wrong or anything like that, but we do want to question some initiatives. And that takes a lot of courage. I think the biggest key takeaway I want to give everyone is just keep learning. You can never stop. And remember, every little nugget that you learn, somebody else can teach that nugget. So remember, you're also a teacher with everything that you learn.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Tina Agustiady. Tina is an award-winning continuous improvement leader and certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt. She is currently serving as a vice president at JP Morgan Chase. She's led lean transformations across major organizations like MetLife, Philips Healthcare, and BASF. She's a multi-time published author, educator, and two-time ASQ medal winner. Tina brings decades of experience turning lean and Six Sigma principles into real-world results. Tina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're super excited to have you here. And where are you located at today,
I'm
geographically?
in sunny Tampa, Florida. It is a beautiful day out.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different temperature here in Utah, where I'm located.
I never said that. I mean, it's gloomy. It's terrible.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's a good time of year to be in Florida. So we like to start the podcast off with a little segment we call the Spark. And the Spark is this idea of, how did you get your start in this discipline, continuous improvement? Was there a moment where you got inspired to get involved in this kind of work?
It happened right out of school. I went to Ohio University and I got my engineering degree. And I knew I liked Lean and Six Sigma because I liked using a strategic and this follow methodology to make improvements. But I remember wanting to get my green belt and my father saying to me, "Why should I pay for you to get this?" And it was kind of a selling point. I had to say, well, it's going to help me get a better job and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I convinced him and I got my Six Sigma certification. And right away, I put it on my resume and people started contacting me. They wanted me to come work for them. And one company, Tyco Healthcare, which is where I worked for, they said, we'd like you to come on board and do a Six Sigma project for us. And that's when my spark went off. I did this project. It ended up saving the company thousands of dollars, but it was also for medical equipment. And that's where my passion was. So not only was I helping save the company money, I was doing good in the healthcare world, the healthcare space. And it made me, go to bed nicely at night, wake up, with that spark. Eventually, I just kept going. I couldn't get enough of it. I went and got my black belt. I worked for Nestle Prepared Foods and saved a bunch of money for them doing another black belt project. I got my master black belt. I couldn't stop. I couldn't get enough of it. And what I will tell you, Keith, is I have made an entire career out of Lean and Six Sigma, which I never thought I would do with my degree. But that's how it all happened.
That's so interesting. One thing that I picked up on there is it sounds to me like you went and got a green belt certification outside of employment with a particular company. Like you spent your own money or maybe your father's money at the time, whatever it was.
It's been well paid back.
Well, that's
The funniest part of this is the organization where I got my first green belt. I'm actually a professor for them as well, Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers. I actually help teach for them. So I never thought I would be, the person being taught now being the teacher. So it's a really great full circle.
that's a great example of learning something and then, teaching it to others, which I think is a incredibly valuable and rewarding part of just the human experience, much less like the work experience, but the human experience.
It's my motto. Everything is about learning. You know how the Dory the fish, just keep swimming. I say just keep learning, right? And you're never going to regret the fact that you keep learning. So the more you learn, then you can start teaching. And so that's really my motto in life.
That's so cool. Yeah, I know that a lot of people are in organizations where the company has a sponsored program, and I think you worked in some of those. So that first job that you got, what was that job title? What was that role?
Actually a production supervisor at that time. And so the reason I really do want to talk about this for a moment is I thought being an engineer, I could only be an engineer, right? And I took this role as a production supervisor. And I will tell you right now, I am a better engineer now because I was a production supervisor. I was on the ground, right there with everybody, watching the process, doing the process, and it just helped me learn rather than kind of sitting in an office and telling people what to do. So it was a great experience for me.
So I love to touch on just a few of the milestones on your CI journey, maybe like job titles and how that was. You went from production engineer to vice president at a very large corporation. Tell us about some of the stops along the way.
Yeah, so after I became a production supervisor, I said, let me go see what this engineering thing is about. So I did go to Nestle, where I got my black belt through Clemson University, and I was an industrial engineer there. They call them industrial performance engineers, and we helped the performance of the systems. And I was working in the South Carolina plant. It ended up being a really great project where we were looking at machinery, but we were also looking at labor, and we were looking at the whole round of things. And I remember I did used to be that person people would be like, what is she here doing? Why is she watching me? Once people understood that I was trying to make their lives easier, people started coming to me and saying, come look at this process. Let's look at this process. Don't you think they could do it like this? Don't you think we could change this around? And that's when I really knew the momentum was coming. After Nestle, when I was working in that factory, I had actually completed a black belt project, and I wrote a whole like kind of booklet on it. And one of the presidents of Nestle got a hold of it somehow, and he called me personally and he said, I would like you to do this for the corporation, not just for one facility. So we're going to promote you up to the corporate office. And so I actually went to Cleveland, Ohio, and did it for all of the Nestle prepared foods plants. So that was a really cool opportunity for me.
That's something that's really interesting about this discipline is you've got the part of doing the work and making the improvement. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are just good at solving problems. They're just good operators and they just solve problems and that sort of thing. But there's something about the formality of doing like a greenbelt project where you're expected to do some sort of a report out or presentation on it, where a lot of work that gets done, great work in companies that gets done, there's no report out that's done. And that report out, it seems like that was kind of an important part of you getting noticed and you getting opportunities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I like about Six Sigma. And that's what I mentioned at the very beginning. There is a methodology to it, right? It's not a prescription. It's not like a very direct do this and then do this, but there is a methodology and it keeps you organized. And I will say, being a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, you automatically become a project manager because you have those core skills and you have these tools that you can say, well, this has worked for me before. Maybe I need to go here. Maybe I need to try this. So there are sets of tools. They don't automatically go in a certain way, but they do help out. And it keeps you organized by using the DMAIC format: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. You always go back to those, or plan, do, check, act. So definitely having that core of a background is important.
So the title at Nestle that you held was what?
I was an industrial performance engineer.
Industrial performance engineer. Okay, so we have production engineer,
Production
industrial
supervisor, and then
production
I worked
supervisor.
at industrial performance engineer. And then once I left Nestle, we had a tight knit group that went to, companies together. And I went to Dawn Foods and I was a continuous improvement manager there. And that's where my continuous improvement title started coming. I was a continuous improvement manager there. That's also where I worked in a BASF. I was a continuous improvement manager. When I worked at Philips Healthcare, my actual job title was Master Black Belt. So they wanted people to know that we're using this philosophy, we're using this methodology, and we're making a whole job out of it. So my group and I were all, either master black belts or black belt.
I think that's one thing that's interesting is how titles and things that are in demand and the positions, the way they name them, even in organizations, sometimes there's patterns across industries. Sometimes it changes over time. So from continuous improvement manager, that's a pretty popular job. Tell us what a continuous improvement manager does day to day.
So really, I follow the lean methodology, which is a system, right? It's not just about tools. And I learned that the hard way. I used to go into meetings and say, I use this tool and I use that tool. But that's not what it's about. It's all about the people. It's all about the culture. So the way it works is you work with the people and you have a system in place. A system could be something like we do value stream mapping, or we do waste walks, or we do a huddle every morning. Those are, your systems you put in place. With that, you have metrics, you're capturing how you're doing. Are you doing well? Are you not doing well? And from that, again, you're just working with the people on all of this. And then you're making improvements. Did I meet my goal? No, I didn't meet my goal. Why? Why didn't I meet my goal? And those are the things that we're trying to do and understand. So that's where root cause problem solving comes in as continuous improvement leads, managers, however you want to call it. And that's what you're doing is making everyone's life just a little bit easier. If you think about your life, all the time, what do you want to do? You want to spend more time with your family. You want to spend more time, doing the things you love. So you want to finish the other things as efficiently as possible. I think about that all the time. I have my entire kitchen, even organized in a manner where I can do everything the fastest. My spices are right beside the stove because I use a lot of spices. The knives are right beside the stove, right? The plates are right over here when I'm ready to plate. So everything is in a logical manner that I can be the most efficient as possible. I don't want to sit there and walk around the entire kitchen looking for something.
That is interesting how when you learn these tools and these systems, how it can like affect your just perception of everything you do, whether it's going through the airport or the grocery store or your own kitchen. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. But what would you say is the mindset that this training, this discipline allows you to bring to the culture of these organizations, or how is it that the culture of the organizations values these kind of skills?
You know, the reason they value it so much is back to a little bit of that project management piece of it. You are moving things along. You are making things better. But, what do most companies get wrong with like Lean Six Sigma or other CAI methodologies is a lot of people view it as an approach of tools, right? And tools are great. I mentioned this earlier, but culture is the most important part. And that's what companies are really appreciating with this continuous improvement or Lean Six Sigma methodology. And it all actually does start with leadership, right? We find the objectives to find this outstanding leader, right? And then we have to figure out what does it make for others to follow this leader. And that's where continuous improvement really comes in. We figure out how are we making the people happy? How do we have good leaders? And then how do we build other leaders up to do good things as well?
In your current role, are you responsible for defining the strategic goals or the direction of the improvement program?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of different roles at my current organization. And the first one was I was a lean trainer and development of lean. And so, really, what I was trying to do is what I just talked to you about a little bit ago, which is teaching others, but getting those others to then teach others. Train the trainer methodology. And that was my real goal in that role. And it was great because I would have people say, hey, I actually led a root cause analysis event based on what I learned from you, and this is what I learned, and this is how I did it. So a lot of the train the trainer is part of our goal or scope.
What language do you use for the training itself? Like, do you call it a green belt training, black belt training, or do you have some other name that you use?
We just call it lean training.
Lean training. Okay, so you use
Yeah,
the lean term, the lean
yeah,
training.
yeah.
And what does that entail? Is it like how much time away from their operational job is
Right,
that?
right. Well, what I try to do, especially when it comes to lean training and development, is you want it short and concise, right? You don't want to take up, all day long of somebody. So I can explain some pretty basic things about lean to you in about 30 minutes, right? I can even do it in less, but 30 minutes, you'll get a really good aspect of what it means. And the way I start is waste. Think about waste. Think about waste in all of your lives. It's out there. We have an acronym, we call it downtime. It stands for the 8 different wastes that we have. And that's what we look for, and that's what we try to eliminate. If you start just right there, you're going to get pretty far. My other fabulous tool I like is value stream mapping. Reason being, you look for the waste, you eliminate the waste, but then you also actually look, for the value add, the non-value add. And you're trying to say, I want to get rid of those non-value added activities and I want to focus on the value added activities, which comes down to the customer, right? What does the customer want? What is the customer willing to pay for? I think about that all the time. What am I personally willing to pay for? And that's all I really want to pay for, right? I don't want to pay for the excess movement or transportation or the quality checks or all those different things in between. I just want to pay for my product and what I need out of my product.
I love this topic. Question for you about how you train value stream mapping. Do you adapt the training to like where they work, or do you have like an example? Bruce, the toast Kaizen guy,
Yes.
like each Kaizen through like making toast. Do you have like a very specific example?
I do. And I learned from Bruce. Bruce and I are good friends. The first time I ever met him, I said, "Are you the toast guy?" He said, "Yes, I am." So after that, that's, obviously our joke. But he makes toast, I make pizza. I also love to eat. And so I have a value stream map on how to make a pizza. And it literally goes from starting where the phone call comes in to them making the dough. Did they pre-make the dough? Did they make too many doughs? Did they go ahead and start making pepperoni pizzas when somebody wanted a veggie pizza? We go through the whole value stream of somebody calling in to order a pizza, to the people taking in the order, then making the pizza, to also even the delivery. We thought, wow, we made this pizza in 10 minutes. No big deal, right? But the delivery driver, it took them 30 minutes to get that pizza to the customer. Now we have a big deal. Do we need to hire more people for delivery drivers versus more people spreading sauce? You start thinking of these things and they become common sense. And that's what I love about value stream mapping. But I actually urge all of you to do it with something simple like that, making toast, making pizza, whatever it is that everybody can relate to, going to the grocery store, making an online purchase, whatever it is that really makes sense, that I'm guessing somebody in the world has ordered a pizza before or gone to the grocery store or something like that.
Is there any advice that you give on like where to start, or because it seems, I know sometimes with value stream mapping, like sometimes the start isn't the start that you initially think it is?
Yeah, well, you just want to start like in its full circle. Supplier to customer is the way you want to think about it, right? All the way through. So you think about what's the first thing I do, and think about it as simple as you ordering that pizza. What's the first thing you do when you're ordering the pizza? Maybe you start with, "Hey family, what do you want on your pizza? What do you want on your pizza?" And then you pick up the phone. Or people like me, hate picking up the phone. I would rather just do it online. I can pick everything I want. And so those are different value streams we go through as well. What's a better process? Do you get incentivized maybe to use the web portion versus calling? There are actually incentives for those types of things.
Yeah.
So just going through the process, and you don't want to be too detailed, but detailed enough where you have these high level steps of what to do with a pizza. So I guarantee even right now, if I ask you, what are, the 8 main steps to getting this pizza order, you would say the same things. Yeah, I pick up the phone, I order the pizza. What does the pizza shop do? They take the order. The first cook probably does the dough, the toppings, the sauce,
Yeah.
etc., and then goes in the oven, puts it in a box, waits for the delivery driver. Those are the steps you want to go through. High level, but detailed enough where you can find some of the nuances.
That's so interesting. The training that you do, how does somebody inside the organization get selected or volunteered, whatever the case might be, to go through that training? Where does that land in
So
there?
there's a lot of different corporations that do it differently. I believe in an online version where you can literally go online into your own corporate division and able to, do a search for, I'm looking for this training, I'm looking for that training. Right now, a fantastic thing for people to do is LinkedIn Learning, right? LinkedIn Learning, you can type anything out there. Try it sometime. And you can type it in and you'll find a video on it. So those are some of the best ways to do it. So definitely having some type of repository to go to.
Yeah, it sounds, companies exist at all sorts of different states of evolution, but it sounds like you guys have a pretty formal like repository of training offerings for employees.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about somebody the other day that I was talking to, and they had done some root cause analysis, and I forget which KPI it was. It was a transportation district, and God, I'm trying to remember which KPI it was, but they had selected their lead measure was number of hours that our employees engage with the in-house training. And it wasn't an intuitive thing like, oh, this key performance metric over here, we're going to focus on increasing this training level. And it was just a really interesting insight of how people with these sort of skills think about problem solving in very interesting but methodical ways.
And, I thought about it that way too, because I didn't want people just taking my classes to take classes to say, hey, I took this class. So I started having knowledge checks. Sorry, did you really understand what we were talking about? So you would take a knowledge check right after you took the training to ensure that you did retain the information. And we wanted to be as hands on as possible. That's the other thing with any type of lean training. Make it as relatable and hands on as you possibly can. Again, things that people understand, things that people can relate to.
So, in terms of things that work with these training programs, I know some companies do, like some companies will say, hey, here's a subscription to some free online training, do it self-paced. Some companies will have more formal, like waves or phases. Where do you guys land in that spectrum?
Yeah, so it depends what part of the organization you're in. I will say that most of us will say, hey, you have to do so many trainings a year. Some are mandatory, some are uh, optional. But most of the time, if you give them an option and these are your choices, people want to take these trainings. So what I will say is at the firm where I was doing lean training and development, majority of these students coming to the classes wanted to. This was on their own will. Their supervisor did agree to it, but they did it for their own free will to learn. That's when you know you've done a good job.
Yeah, I have heard different versions of this story from a lot of different people, but there's maybe not a direct correlation like do this, get promoted, but there's not a causation, but a correlation between people engaging in this sort of training and advancing their career path, you might say.
So I'm actually an adjunct professor for a couple of different organizations or colleges. And what I will tell you is I have so many success stories that people say, hey, Tina, I got my green belt or my black belt. And I ended up getting promoted a few months later. So I do think there is a direct correlation in my view. If anything, you're showing how you're maturing and learning and doing new things and really stepping outside of the box. So we don't have to always just go back to college and get another degree or things like that to further our knowledge. We can always just get another certification or just some type of learning. Like I said, just keep learning.
And I know one of the interesting debates on LinkedIn is around things like green belts, like, oh, you're wasting your time just training people in green belt. You're not getting at the essence of what we should be doing. And you guys do training, so obviously you believe in it. But what are some things that companies should do to not fall into that trap where they're just getting paper belts or, certifications without business improvement?
Right. And that's where that hands on ability really works. So, actually, when I train, if you watch any of my courses, we'll actually pause them in the middle and we'll say either stop and you're going to do your own view of an assignment we give you, or we're going to say, I want you to pause for 5 minutes and I want you to think about where this would pertain to your job, your actual job. Or maybe it's even your home or your life or something in your day, right? But to really make it relatable for that person, that's where it's not just a piece of paper and you're not just memorizing tools and verbiage and, Japanese terms. You're actually saying, where can I apply this in real life? So I make all of my students come back and say, where'd you apply it? Show me where you applied it. Even sometimes after I give people belts, I say, come back and show me your project, right? And that's really when it's fun.
How often do you meet with the students in that training? Like what sort of a cadence do you touch base with them?
Full of different trainings that I do. So I will say I work for Villanova University and Loyola University, and we meet once a week. Everything else is online, but we do meet once a week, and then we have an additional office hour. And so at that point in time, we do some type of training for that hour, which is very, hands on, where we do an activity within the students and myself. And then afterwards, just an office hour. What questions do I have? What questions did I have on the quiz? What questions do I have on this tool, or et cetera?
So the stuff that you do for Villanova, is that part of I know that some MBA programs have like a course in this, but sometimes you can just get a certificate from a university. Is it a
Yes. So,
certificate type thing?
yes, you will get a certification. You will be certified, which is a great thing. So it's not, just a piece of paper. You're truly certified. And you have to show that mastery by taking the class, completing a project, which I do think is important. making sure you actually come to the classes. And then finally, you will take a certification exam to acknowledge that you understand the knowledge behind everything.
Interesting. Yeah, I have heard stories of some large companies usually having relationships with a particular university to like send people there to get trained. Do you see that either from the Villanova perspective or from the JP Morgan Chase? Is there formal relationship?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, when it comes to Villanova University, I see a lot of students that come within a certain company. So a company sends, 8 of them or 10 of them together and they all come in. Or sometimes pause there for a second. I'm trying to
Sure.
think. I think that that's about it, when it comes to Villanova, what I just said.
Okay. Yeah, this is one of those interesting, like, I love to share these best practices where, we're not sharing confidential information from companies, but there's these best practices where universities can partner up with companies and, hopefully universities are pretty good at teaching people. Companies aren't always great at, having an education department, bless the ones who are certainly. But I have heard stories of successful partnerships between companies saying, you know,
Yeah.
the company will either pay for part or all of a training to get people trained in certain things. And man, I personally I went and got an MBA myself, and some of my favorite classes that I felt like I got the most value out of were some of these like supply chain where I got introduced to lean. And I look back on like getting the green belt certification, like, man, I probably could have done that for like a tenth the cost and got half the knowledge.
Well, what's funny is I actually did that for Loyola University. I went to Chicago and there was a small company that was there. There was about 6 of them, and we did a supply chain management and agile certification for them. So yeah, a lot of universities are going to specific companies, whether the companies come to them or we go to the companies. There's a lot of that going on nowadays, and I'm a big fan of it. I think it's a great practice.
I think it's brilliant too because I sat in a lecture from Clayton Christensen one time, and he was talking about how education is, ripe for disruption, innovator's dilemma type stuff. And I think AI right now is like the big thing everywhere. Like, what's going to happen with AI? And AI is taking away a lot of the work of the humans. But I think that there's a thinking, a learning process that is intrinsically human that humans value. And man, if the AI can do some of the boring stuff so that I can spend more time learning and diving into interesting stuff, like that's a pretty exciting prospect for AI.
Anybody to think AI is, going to take their job or anything. I want you to think about AI as helping you do those mundane activities. I'll give you an example. The other day, I did go to Villanova University. We were taping some videos. And of course, I came home and I postponed my expense report for as long as I could. Finally, I said it's time for me to do this. And AI said, "Would you like to upload your receipts and we'll create your expense report for you?" And I said, "Absolutely, that sounds phenomenal." I texted my boss and I said, "Let's see how this is gonna work. I'm a little nervous." I scanned my receipts and it was amazing. It had the restaurant names, it had the amount, it took out the taxes, it showed if it was a hotel, it did every single penny and date and so forth. I haven't done an expense report that quickly.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yes. So where can we use AI to help us? It's exactly what you said, Keith. Those mundane activities that, we don't really want to do and AI can help us. That's where it should help us. And we do the more strategic thinking. We think about how to innovate and grow and let AI do the easier tasks for us. And that's really the way we should think about AI.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I know that, again, just the general fear of AI taking jobs, and probably like some sort of a bias here, but I think having a skill that involves change management, like AI is going to require a lot of change in a lot of places, and figuring out how to explain or I guess sell the business case of change and what AI can do is a pretty valuable skill, particularly in enterprises that tend to be a little slower to change.
And change management is the biggest factor of it. I think the reason I've ever been successful in any of my classes is adding in the change management. So any class that I teach, we talk about change management because it's such a big deal right now. And if you think about, the future of continuous improvement, back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, remember what managers did? They were micromanagers. They had to see every single detail. They needed to be there. They didn't leave much up to the employee. But now things have changed and change management has helped us with this. Now what we're doing is we're relying a lot more on empowerment and we're motivating people. And that's what we should really look at. So in today's work environment, employees changed over the decades, but now they want more power. They're tired of micromanagers. They don't want a micromanager. That's the last thing that they want. So the future of continuous improvement is going to be critical, and we're going to learn a lot more of it through Lean Six Sigma. But we need to identify just outstanding characteristics of a leader, which I talked about before. What is a good leader? What is a good manager? And how can we have the different types of leadership power? So really just relying on CI being a team-based approach. It's all about the team. It's about everybody's voice. And that's when you have, if you hear about the Shingo model, you have respect for every individual and you lead with humility.
This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com. How important is emotional intelligence in leadership?
Emotional intelligence is 100% of what leadership is. We have to have that emotional intelligence. Without the emotional intelligence, we're not going to get very far. You could be the smartest person in the world, but without emotional intelligence, you're not going to get very far. And so there's four main aspects to it. There's self-awareness. Everything starts within yourself. Are you self-aware? There's social awareness. Socially, are you doing the right things? Then there's relationship management. You want to make sure you're having good relationships with others. And then there's self-management. If I know I'm going to get angry, sitting in the car in rush hour for an hour, what can I do to self-manage myself? Can I listen to something? Can I call somebody, right? It's all goes into that emotional awareness and that emotional intelligence.
Love it. That's great stuff. Whenever I think of self-awareness myself, I'm always like kind of questioning my self-awareness. Like, am I being self-aware right now or am I being not self-aware because I think I'm self-aware?
The way I think about it sometimes is I travel a lot. I've always traveled a lot. And, when you go to a hotel, do you act the same way in your hotel as you do at home? An example, do you make your bed in your hotel room? Do you hang up your towel in your hotel room? Do you turn the lights off, right? All the things you normally do at home, do you do that in a hotel? And then things changed a little bit because of COVID. And I remember going to a hotel and they would say, we can't come and clean your room due to COVID, but we will incentivize you and give you 500 extra bonus points. And I thought, yes, absolutely. I would prefer to do that. Is it easy to make my own hotel bed? Absolutely. It's the same thing I do at home. Is it easy to hang up my towel that I used one time? Absolutely. I do that at home. Can I turn the lights off? It's these things that are easy, but it comes down to the social awareness as well, the self-management, the self-awareness. And then the way the relationship management goes in is now I'm telling people about it. Like, hey, did you turn your lights off? Are you being energy efficient? Hey, did you know I got 500 extra bonus points just because they're not coming into my room to clean it?
That's interesting. You brought up COVID, and I wanted to ask about this. So I'm assuming that you got your initial green belt training well before COVID, and you've done a lot of trainings before COVID. COVID came, changed a lot of things. Some things are changing back. Are there some things that changed in the way you train, maybe in particular this lean stuff, that have stuck that are significantly different than what it was before?
Yeah, there was a lot that changed. So what I will say is I have been doing online teaching for a very long time. So not too much has changed. But when I go on site, I told you I like to be hands-on. We used to play Legos and airplanes and things like that. And I remember the day that COVID really hit and we weren't allowed to travel. I was working at MetLife at the time. I was literally traveling for work. And they said, you all need to go home and you're not going to travel again. And I thought, how am I going to train people? I go on site to train people. So I had to think outside of the box. So I started coming up with exercises that we could do online. Literally, we would do like a signature exercise where people had to type in their names. And I was doing the same principles that we would do on site, except they had to do it online. So you really had to think outside the box a little bit. Yes, we had to change and use the change management techniques, but we could still do it. It just got a little bit more of getting used to. And now look at our world now. Yes, a lot of people are going back into the office, but think about how much we can do over Zooms and KPI fireside chats and so forth. There's a lot out there.
That's so interesting. I wanna ask you to just explain a little bit. I think I've participated in maybe I don't know if there's like many airplane um, simulations. Explain that one for anybody that hasn't like seen that or
Yes.
experienced it. What is it?
That
What's
is
the
one of
lesson?
our favorites. So everybody has to build a paper airplane, right? Just a matter of paper airplane. Well, a lot of us need training on that. We forget how to do it. Some people are better at certain parts. We always know that we have different operators, and one person says, I don't know how to make a paper airplane, so I'm just going to fold the paper in half. That's my job, right? So we give the easier jobs to the people that are a little more scared, right? But the way we do it is we start with a batch process. So we say you have to make six. First person has to make their portion of six, and then they move it to the next operator in the line, like an assembly line, right? And they do their six and so forth. And you'll see there's all of these bottlenecks. And the real bottleneck is obviously the person who has the hardest job, right? So we do this simple task, and it takes about 10 minutes or so. And then we say, okay, you guys can change whatever you want. What would you like to do differently? And this is even without training. People say, well, number one, why do I have to do batch processing? Why can't I just do one at a time? Number two, can we help this person out because they're spending, 1 minute on their task and I'm spending 10 seconds. So you start noticing these things so quickly by just observing. We call this, go to the Gemba. So just watching the process, we see where the bottlenecks are and what we need to do differently.
Love that. So it's kind of a lesson on going from each person does their own, and then you do like a packed assembly line, batch process.
Yes,
Interesting.
and then there's innovation. Even at the end, we used to have everybody label their plane. So they had to have their logo, whether it's their Delta or we would say, make it a star. And then I'd have some people say, can we get a stamp with a star? Absolutely. Do you have one? Right? Go ahead. And so then we start talking about that innovation piece of it too. So it's not just can we be more efficient, but hey, where could I maybe even spend a little money to make ourselves a little more efficient?
I love that. So that's a great exercise that probably works well in person. And you said you had to come up with a different one to use in a remote environment. What did you come up with for a remote environment?
I did the exact same thing, except I had people sign their signatures, right? So basically, I had a PowerPoint out ready where they could all, everybody had access. And I said, person one, sign your signature 6 times. And then the next person couldn't do it until the first person finished their 6 signatures. And then same thing, it was batch processing. And then they said, what can we do better? And they said, well, I don't want to wait for this person. Can't we just all start signing our names at the same time? And then, I had certain people say, you have to do this in red. And they push back and say, well, why? Why do we have to do it in red? Great question. Is it because that's just what the customer asked for? Or is there a reason behind it? Can we do something more automated to help that process out? So we really just, instead of just doing things because the manager told you to, we're questioning it, right? And in a way that we lead with humility, but we're still questioning why we're doing certain things. I think we mentioned this before. A lot of the times we do things, it's because somebody said so, or we've always done this, right? So we need to get a little bit away from we've done this all of our lives. We've always done this. To am I doing it right? Am I doing the right thing?
Is there an example or a lesson of doing things the old way for the wrong reasons?
Absolutely. So I love to cook. I've told you I like to eat. So one of my favorite things to do is watch the cooking channel. And I was watching Diners, Drive-ins and Dives with Guy Fieri. And he's watching a gentleman, and this gentleman is making this big pot of chili. And he does his thing with the chili, and at the very end, he sticks a big metal spatula in it and covers it with foil and sticks it in the fridge. And Guy Fieri says, why did you put that metal spoon in the pot before you put it in the fridge? Why didn't you take it out? And that guy looks at him and says, I've been doing this for 30 years. Almost like Guy was silly for asking this question. But that was his answer was, we've been doing this forever. Why wouldn't we do that? And I guarantee whoever else he taught to make this chili, that's what he told them to do, right? And in my head, I'm going, I probably don't want my metal spoons sitting in there overnight for many reasons, right? But they always did it that way. Another example is somebody was teaching their daughter how to cook for Thanksgiving. And anyway, she took out the ham and she was putting it in a big pan and she cut the end off the ham and she, put it in the oven and went on. So then the daughter was then teaching her daughter later how to make this Thanksgiving recipe. And the daughter said, why'd you cut off that portion of the ham? And she said, oh, that's the way mom taught me how to do it. Well, it turns out the reason that mom had taught her how to do it, that was the size of the pan she had. She didn't want to buy another pan. The ham didn't fit in the whole pan. But the daughter actually had an appropriate pan. But because she had known that you cut off that part of the ham, she just started doing it. So why are we doing things? Is it because that's how we were taught? Is it that's how we always did things? We really need to just question ourselves.
Tina, you seem like you've got a well-honed ability to be friendly and engaging with people. I don't know if you were just, if you were just born that way or if you had to develop that. But I know some people, when they go in to look at somebody else's process, have been met with resistance. Do you have any advice on how to approach that sort of situation to not let people get on the defensive?
Yes, and it's this story I call, and a lot of people have heard of it, that it's called WIFM, what's in it for me. I need people to know what's in it for them. So before I start with any type of improvement activity or story, we talk about what makes your life the most difficult. What in a perfect world would you do to make your life better? Once people realize that we're in it to understand what's in it for them, what's in it for me, they really want to be on board. So that's the really important part. We're here actually to make your life easier. We're not here to take away any jobs or anything like that. We want to make your life easier because that makes everybody else's life easier. So I'll definitely leave you with that acronym is WIFM. What's in it for me? And you want everybody to be able to ask that to themselves.
Yeah, I think when you go into those situations, sometimes, especially when like a third party is brought in by someone and they're like, hey, Tina's going to come in and spend some time with you. Everybody's like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or and you start talking about performance improvement or process improvement. And people are like, well, I must be doing something wrong because there's this improvement here. So yeah, that's,
Well, at the end of the day, process improvement is for everyone. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't keep improving, somebody else is going to get better and then they're going to take over. So that's where the innovation mindset comes in as well. So always, thinking of, remember the Blockbuster story, right? Blockbuster, I remember being a kid going to the Blockbuster and grabbing my movie and rewinding and then being like, oh, I don't want to take it back. I'll just take the late fee, right? How was Blockbuster making all their money? It was through late fees. It
yeah,
wasn't
of
even
course.
through the movies, right? But when they were asked to be bought out, they didn't even think about it. We're doing just fine. They were doing great. Look what happened to Blockbuster now. They didn't want to do any continuous improvement. They didn't want to innovate. They didn't want to do anything different. And now they're out of business. So we always have to continuously improve.
Yeah, I think that's an important drive for everyone is to keep thinking about how to avoid finding yourself on that burning platform. That's a good one. Um, I'm tempted. This just is a thought that came to me. Obviously, as you work and you get through your career, the longer you've been doing something, the more confidence you have, and the better you feel about pushing back or questioning a process. One of the thoughts that I have, I've got two young daughters, and just kind of early in their careers, and one of my daughters comes home from work sometimes, and I can tell there's like an insecurity about I don't know what I'm doing. I should be better at this thing. And I don't dare say things to the management because I don't want to look like I'm incompetent or I'm not good enough. And I wonder, you're obviously experienced. Is there something you might say to somebody who's early in their career who feels like I don't dare question things? How do you
Well,
do?
I would say you have to push back. You have to speak your mind. But remember, go by the principles about leading with humility, right? So we don't want to get angry. We don't want to tell people that they're wrong or anything like that. But we do want to question some initiatives. And that takes a lot of courage. I will tell you, I've had some difficult opportunities where I had to say, stop. We really have to stop engaging this way. It's not a healthy conversation, etc. It is important to be able to do that, but do it in a manner that you're not embarrassing yourself and you're not being rude or mean, but you're more than anything questioning the validity of why things are happening. And I think that's where you should have the courage to be able to push back. Now, I'm not saying do it all the time, but I do think it is an important thing to do when you feel strongly about something, especially if you're questioning something.
And is there something that leaders can do to create that culture, to create that environment where people do feel safe to bring up those things?
There needs to be that open door policy. And I'm not joking. I've worked in an environment where the boss told me I wasn't allowed to talk to the boss's boss without his permission. And it should never be like that. Never. And I will tell you, just this week, I spoke to my boss's boss, just had a great conversation. And it was nothing at all to my boss. He wasn't worried, oh, what did Tina say about me? He wasn't worried about those types of things. There should be open, honest communication. And I actually opened up to my boss's boss, and I told him, I said, "You know what I want to come to you with this week? Instead of an opportunity idea, I want to tell you where I struggled because I guarantee I'm not the only person that has struggled." And I told him where I struggled, why I struggled, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it because it was one of those, dealing with a client. I really don't want to mess up this relationship. But I said I was not sure what to do. And so it's okay to be able to bring up these things. If you actually don't know what to do, you can always pause and come back. If you don't know the answer to a question, don't make it up, right? Stop, pause, and come back.
I think there's such a good lesson in there, what you just said of like, maybe there's a way to ask that question where it's like, hey, am I the only one that doesn't know how to do this? Am I the only one that's struggling with this? If I am, then sure, I'll go back and work on myself. But maybe other people are like that. I think that's a great like
Well,
approach.
my thing is, if there's a way that you can do something, even if it's the wrong something, then there's something wrong with the system and not with you, right? So it's the whole mistake proofing, poke yoke, right? And the other day, I got not in trouble, but a little bit of a, why did you do that? The standard work instruction clearly says to do this. And I said, if the system allows me to do that, we have a different problem, right? It's allowing me to do that. So, yes, I believe strongly in standard work instructions. Am I going to pull one up with every single process I do? No. So, if you don't want me doing this certain thing, make the system so you cannot do that, right? You can't put a diesel gas pump into a regular, gas. So, things like that.
Yeah.
Starts when you were little. Remember when you were little and you played with those squares and the circles and you can't put the square in the circle? It's just like
I love that. I think that God, there's so many good lessons in process improvement that keep you focused on, I think, the right things.
actually my husband teases me that I shouldn't actually be able to drive a car, and the only reason I am is because all the mistake proofs, right? Beeps with a backup camera, automatic stop if I'm going to hit something. There's all the, it tells me if there's somebody in the left lane. So there's so many things that we can do with this innovation and automation
That's
with
so
with
true.
the human touch, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And a lot that a leader can do to create a good culture for allowing that to happen. It's so good. Okay, so I've got a little segment here, rapid fire. So these are just kind of, short questions, short phrase, sentence answers. The most important job of a leader is to blank.
Understand their people and motivate them.
Is there a book that you recommend that you think everybody should start with this, or I don't know, just a good one that you like?
I do. And this is a little plug for you, Robert Bartachenko. Everything I learned about lean, I learned in first grade. It's about 100 pages, best book I've ever read. I teach my kids. I'm going to the American Teach In next week to teach the kids about everything I learned about lean, I learned in first grade.
I love that. That's the second time I've heard that book on this podcast. So that
He's a
definitely
great guy, Robert. I'll have to
something
tell him about this.
in my Pareto chart. That one's moving up. Is there a thought leader that you want to acknowledge, recognize?
Dr. Shigeo Shingo, and I actually got to meet that man a few times before he passed. And that man taught me everything about lean because he taught me everything about culture. And I recall I congratulated him for all of his work, and he came back and congratulated me, and he signed his book. And he said, "Congratulations on your accomplishments." And I'm thinking, he's saying that to me, but he taught me about really respecting every individual. Even the times where you want to be angry, you have to just pause and just really understand everybody is here for a purpose and a reason. And we had to lead with that humility. So that's my biggest thought leader. And the day he died, I did cry.
I'm guessing. Well, I know the Shingo Institute has obviously a strong affinity with Shigeo Shingo as well.
Yes, I
Yeah,
am a part of the Shingo Institute as well. Yes.
wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, big fans of the stuff that they do. Okay, in terms of favorite tools, I know that it's not about the tools; it's about the people. But is there a tool that you kind of have as a favorite when you pull out
Yep,
frequently?
there's 2, and you hit on one of them just a moment ago, which was the Pareto. You can show so many things with a Pareto, right? It's visual, it's quick, it's great, right? So I tell everybody, if anybody ever says, "What are your main problems?" Do a Pareto and you'll see what are the main problems. And then you can even dig deeper and do a second level. Well, why are we having this problem with this, right? So Pareto is probably my favorite. My second is what I touched on earlier, which is value stream mapping, because we do touch on just all those wastes, right? The waste that we see in our everyday lives. You know what Shigeo Shingo actually said? When he went into people's offices, he would look in their trash can. He wanted to know what people were throwing away and why. And that's why I love value stream mapping. You're really just understanding the value. What is it that we really want for the customer and what that customer is willing to pay for?
That's so interesting. You just made me think about what's in my trash can. Apple cores,
Come over and look.
cores, and protein bar wrappers today.
So that's the other question. What could you do with that apple core? Is there something? Could you compost it? Does it have to be waste, right? Can we turn waste into something value added? Lots of things to question, even by looking at your trash can.
That's such a good lesson. Finish this sentence. Continuous improvement is.
Continuous improvement is breathing. If you don't do it, you won't last.
I love it. That's such a good one. That's such a good one. Well, Tina, before I wrap up, is there anything any questions that I missed that you had prepared for? Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think the biggest key takeaway I want to give everyone is just keep learning. You can never stop. And remember, every little nugget that you learn, somebody else can teach that nugget. So remember, you're also a teacher with everything that you learn.
Love it. And so, Tina, we'd love to, promote things that you're working on or places that people could follow you. What's the best way for somebody to follow your work or get in touch with you?
Please follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn and I do have a lot of LinkedIn courses. So definitely look up anything with lean when it comes to continuous improvement, yellow belts, white belts. And we have a new class coming out soon. I'll give you a small hint. It is on AI.
Lovely, lovely, wonderful. Well, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a real fun conversation. You've got a great energy, and I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you a little bit more and learn some things from you about the best ways to approach a lot of these problems. And it's been a real pleasure. So I'm sure our audience has enjoyed that as well. And for any of our listeners, if you'd like to suggest a guest or ask a question, you can share ideas for episodes. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn also, Keith Norris. Yeah, thanks so much, Tina, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. That was a blast.
And this concludes this episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you have enjoyed today's episode, be sure to add a comment. You can like or follow, subscribe, ask us a question in the comments. That's fun. And follow us on the socials. Share the podcast with friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change.